Welcome back to Mindset English. Today, you're about to hear a powerful story, one that sounds like a movie, full of struggle, discipline, ambition, and the kind of determination that can change a country. It's the true story of one of the most talked about and controversial leaders in modern history, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. But this isn't just a political biography. This is the story of how a small, skinny boy from a damaged city rose to become one of the most powerful men in the world. His life journey, from cold communal flats to the highest office in Russia, is filled with lessons that can inspire anyone who has big dreams. So sit back, relax, and listen carefully. This story will not only help you improve your English, but might also teach you something important about resilience, focus, and self-belief. Let's begin. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7th, 1952, in Leningrad, a city that today is known as St. Petersburg, Russia. His birth came at a time when his country was still healing from the devastation of World War II. He was the third child in his family, but heartbreakingly, his two older brothers had died before he was born. One during infancy and the other during the war. This left Vladimir as the only surviving child of his parents, Maria Ivanovna Putina and Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin. His family lived in harsh conditions. Their apartment was in a rundown communal building. They didn't have the kind of privacy or space most people take for granted today. Instead of having their own bathroom or kitchen, they had to share with multiple families. The hallways were noisy, the kitchen always crowded, and there were often arguments about who could cook or use the toilet first. But this wasn't unusual for families in Russia during that era. Many people had no choice but to live like this. It was normal after the war, especially in cities like Leningrad, which had suffered deeply during the siege of Leningrad. Despite the hardships, the Putins were strong and disciplined. Vladimir's father had served in the war and was badly injured, while his mother worked hard to support the family. They were strict with Vladimir, not out of cruelty, but out of love. They wanted him to grow up strong and determined. They taught him to never complain and never give up, no matter how hard life became. Little did they know that their quiet, serious boy would one day grow up to lead their entire nation. As a child, Vladimir wasn't especially strong or athletic. In fact, he was small and thin, which made him a target for bullies in the neighborhood. But rather than crying or running away, Vladimir made a bold decision. He would train to become strong. At the age of 12, he began learning judo and sambo, a Russian martial art. He trained every day, not just to win fights, but to build confidence and control. He believed that if he became stronger on the outside, he would also become stronger on the inside. Putin took his training seriously. He wasn't the kind of kid who gave up easily. Over time, he became an expert in judo and eventually earned a black belt, a major achievement for someone his age. Even today, he speaks with great respect about how martial arts helped him stay calm and make clear decisions under pressure. It wasn't just sport for him. It was a way of life. While other children dreamed of becoming doctors, teachers, or astronauts, young Vladimir had a different dream. He wanted to become a spy. He was fascinated by stories of espionage and secret missions. In particular, he was drawn to the KGB, the Soviet Union's powerful intelligence agency. It was one of the most feared and respected organizations in the world, and Vladimir wanted to be part of it. He knew that becoming a spy wouldn't be easy. It required more than just strength. He had to be smart, disciplined, and educated. So he focused hard on his studies. In the beginning, he wasn't a top student, but he pushed himself to improve. He even took the initiative to learn German, a skill that would later become very useful in his career. Every day was a challenge. His mother woke up early to prepare breakfast in the shared kitchen, often waiting her turn to use the stove. The meals were simple: bread with butter, maybe a bit of tea or porridge. Luxuries were few, but Vladimir didn't care about that. While others played with toys or ran around outside, he was busy preparing for the life he dreamed of. After high school, Putin applied to Leningrad State University, one of the best in the city. He was accepted and chose to study law, a smart choice, since the KGB often recruited law graduates. During his university years, he kept a low profile. He wasn't the loud, outgoing type. He stayed focused and disciplined. His professors admired his seriousness, and before long his efforts paid off. In 1975, right after graduating, Putin's childhood dream finally came true. He was accepted into the KGB. For a boy who grew up in a tiny apartment with nothing but big dreams, wearing the uniform of the KGB was a massive achievement. He was now part of an elite group, trained to serve and protect his country in complete secrecy. His first major assignment took him to East Germany during the Cold War. This was a tense time in world history. The world was divided between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. In East Germany, Putin's job was to gather intelligence and build relationships that would help the Soviet Union stay ahead. He worked quietly, always watching, always learning. During these years, he perfected his German and learned how to handle dangerous, complex situations. Life as a KGB officer was never easy. Every move had to be calculated. Every mistake could cost lives. But Putin was not afraid. In fact, he enjoyed the discipline, the secrecy, and the sense of mission. These years shaped him. He wasn't just gaining experience, he was preparing for something much bigger. But then, in 1989, everything changed. The Berlin Wall fell. The Cold War was ending. The Soviet Union was weakening. People across Eastern Europe were rising up against communism. Back home, the Soviet Union was facing serious internal problems. The economy was crumbling. Citizens were losing faith in the government. The world was shifting, and Putin could see it clearly. In 1990, he returned to Leningrad, and a year later, left the KGB. He was ready for a new chapter. Putin didn't jump into politics immediately. Instead, he began working at Leningrad State University, helping one of his former professors with administrative work. It was a quiet job, but it didn't last long. Soon, a well-known politician named Anatoly Sobchak, the mayor of St. Petersburg, offered him a new role. Sobchak needed someone who was smart, loyal, and capable. Putin fit the profile. This job marked Putin's first real step into politics. Though he was still working behind the scenes, he learned quickly. He organized important projects, handled legal issues, and made sure everything ran smoothly. People began to notice his calm, focused approach. Unlike many loud or flashy politicians, Putin was serious and quiet. But when he spoke, people listened. One of his strongest traits was loyalty. He never betrayed his boss, even when political tensions rose. This loyalty made people trust him. Even when Sobchak lost his position in 1996, Putin stood by him. But, with his job in St. Petersburg now gone, Putin had to make a big decision. He moved to Moscow to start over. In Moscow, he began working in the national government. His first positions were small and technical, but that didn't stop him from giving 100% effort. Slowly, he climbed the ranks. People in power saw his talent and discipline. One of those people was Boris Yeltsin, the president of Russia at the time. Yeltsin needed someone reliable, someone who could bring order to a chaotic government. In 1999, he made a surprising decision. He appointed Vladimir Putin as prime minister. At the time, Russia was going through a difficult period. The economy was weak. Corruption was everywhere, and public trust was low. But Putin didn't hesitate. He took action, introducing policies to fight corruption, increase efficiency, and restore order. People began to see him as a strong and capable leader. Then, on December 31, 1999, something shocking happened. Boris Yeltsin announced that he was resigning as president and named Vladimir Putin as the acting president of Russia. Almost overnight, Putin became the most powerful man in the country. On January 1, 2000, the world entered a new millennium, and Vladimir Putin stepped into the highest office in Russia. He didn't waste a moment. He began working immediately to solve Russia's biggest problems. He focused on rebuilding the economy, reducing crime, and restoring national pride. One of his first major challenges was handling the Chechen conflict, a violent separatist movement in the southern region of Chechnya. Putin took a hardline approach. He believed that Russia's unity was non-negotiable. Many Russians supported him. They were tired of feeling like their country was falling apart. They saw Putin as a leader who brought strength, order, and a sense of direction. In March 2000, Putin ran in the presidential election and won by a large margin. He officially became the president of Russia. It was the start of a new era. Putin was young, energetic, and determined to make Russia great again. He introduced reforms to improve healthcare, education, and infrastructure. He also began heavily investing in the military. For years, The Russian armed forces had been underfunded and neglected. Putin changed that. He introduced modern equipment, better training, and advanced technology. His goal was clear. He wanted Russia to be strong, respected, and feared if necessary. As Russia's economy began to recover, largely due to its vast oil and gas resources, Putin's popularity grew. His government used profits from energy exports to rebuild roads, schools, and hospitals. Millions of Russians saw their quality of life improve, and they credited Putin for this progress. At the same time, Putin began tightening control over the media. He believed that in order to keep the country stable, the government needed to manage the flow of information. Some people saw this as smart strategy, while others saw it as a dangerous move that reduced freedom of speech. Putin also clashed with oligarchs, wealthy businessmen who had gained massive power after the collapse of the Soviet Union. These men had influence over politics, media, and the economy. Putin believed that no one should be more powerful than the government, so he began to challenge them. Some fled the country, others lost their businesses. Putin made it clear he was in charge now. Putin's presence had grown not only across the vast landscape of Russia, but also far beyond, into the very corridors of global power where strategies were forged and destinies reshaped. With each passing year, his influence deepened, not just through official policies or military strength, but through the force of his personality, the clarity of his decisions, and his unshakable belief in Russia's potential. He no longer merely governed a country, he embodied an era. To many Russians, he was more than a president. He was a symbol of stability, a guardian of tradition, and a reminder that their nation could once again stand tall after the chaos of the 1990s. His early struggles, the cold winters of Leningrad, the strict discipline of the KGB, these elements forged a man who rarely wavered, whose gaze seemed always fixed beyond the horizon. Even his critics admitted that Putin had vision, and perhaps more importantly, the relentless will to pursue it. This resolve would drive Russia through some of its most dramatic moments on the world stage. As the years passed, Putin focused on reshaping Russia's place in a rapidly changing world. Where others saw chaos, he saw opportunity. While many Western leaders shifted with the political winds, Putin remained steady, a constant force in an unpredictable world. He cultivated relationships with powerful allies, Xi Jinping of China, Narendra Modi of India, and leaders across Central Asia and Africa. These were not just diplomatic gestures. They were calculated moves in a larger game to position Russia at the center of a new global order. He poured resources into military modernization, transforming the once declining Russian armed forces into a formidable power once again. Hypersonic. Missiles, cyber warfare capabilities, and advanced defense systems all became tools in Putin's strategic arsenal. But perhaps even more remarkable was his understanding of psychological power, the use of media, imagery, and narrative to shape perception. His carefully curated public image, riding shirtless on horseback or diving into ancient shipwrecks, was not just bravado. It was storytelling, an unspoken declaration to the world that Russia's leader was not one to be underestimated. Yet behind the spectacle lay a man of discipline and intense privacy. Very little is known about Putin's inner circle or his family. He speaks rarely about his daughters, never flaunts them in public, and keeps his personal life guarded like a state secret. This mystery only amplifies his presence. He is not the kind of leader who shares moments of vulnerability. Instead, he cultivates distance, reinforcing the idea that the state and the man are one and the same, serious, unyielding, and forever watching. Domestically, he maintained a tight grip on political life. Opposition leaders were marginalized, media outlets brought under control, and protests carefully monitored. To some, this was authoritarianism in action. To others, it was the price of national unity. Putin believed that without order, there could be no progress. In his eyes, a fragmented Russia was a weak Russia, vulnerable to foreign influence and internal collapse. Even in moments of crisis, Putin remained composed. When the world responded with outrage over the annexation of Crimea in 2014, he stood firm. Sanctions followed. The ruble suffered. Yet Putin did not back down. Instead, he turned adversity into motivation. He launched new economic initiatives, encouraged domestic production, and sought deeper ties with non-Western markets. He believed that Russia must never again depend on outsiders. And in time, the Russian economy began to adapt, finding new pathways and resources. Through it all, Putin cultivated loyalty, not through fear alone, but through results. Infrastructure improved. Poverty levels declined. The Russian middle class expanded. There were setbacks, of course, no nation is without them. But for many Russians, life under Putin was more predictable, more stable than it had been in decades. And still, he kept pushing forward. He founded the Eurasian Economic Union, envisioning a powerful bloc that could rival the European Union in strength and unity. He worked to elevate the Russian language and culture across member nations, reviving a sense of shared identity. He also remained deeply involved in education reform, often visiting classrooms and universities, encouraging students to pursue science, technology, and engineering. The future, he often said, belongs to those who create it. In private, moments away from the spotlight, he found peace in routine. He began each morning with a quiet breakfast, quail eggs, cottage cheese, a bit of honey, followed by long swims and time in the gym. Fitness, for Putin, was not about vanity, but mental clarity. His disciplined lifestyle mirrored his approach to governance, structured, focused, and without indulgence. He also cherished time with animals, particularly dogs. Many of these were gifts from world leaders, and he treated them with clear affection. Around them, he seemed to soften. It was one of the few glimpses into the man beneath the image, revealing not weakness, but humanity. A quiet balance to the ferocity with which he approached geopolitics. Despite his many accomplishments, Putin, never allowed himself to rest. He believed that the strength of a nation could not be measured only by its economy or its military, but by the resilience of its people. Under his leadership, Russia invested heavily in rural health care, built new hospitals in remote regions, and expanded access to medical care for aging populations. His philosophy was simple. If the people are strong, the country is strong. One of his more daring diplomatic approaches was creating partnerships with nations that had been sidelined by the West. By offering trade deals, weapons, and political support, Russia extended its hand to countries in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. These alliances, though sometimes criticized, gave many developing nations an alternative to Western dominance. To Putin, this was justice, a rebalancing of a global system long tilted in favor of a few. He also poured energy into national pride. Military parades returned to Red Square. Veterans were honored. Russian films, literature, and classical music were promoted through state channels. Every gesture was designed to remind citizens that they belonged to a country with a deep and proud history. In foreign affairs, Putin's cool and calculated style became legendary. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it was precise and measured. He didn't bluff. He didn't threaten unnecessarily, but when provoked, he responded with force. Many in the West misunderstood this as aggression. In truth, it was consistency. He had rules, and once drawn, he rarely moved them. As he aged, there were rumors about his health, his wealth, and even his succession plan. Yet nothing seemed to slow him. He continued to work long hours, attend state meetings, meet foreign leaders, and deliver annual addresses that were both deeply patriotic and intellectually complex. He believed that leadership was a duty, not a privilege, and he carried its weight with solemn pride. Perhaps the most fascinating element of his legacy is how he combined modern strategy with ancient values. While embracing innovation and technology, he also protected the Russian Orthodox Church, spoke openly about the importance of family, and resisted what he saw as harmful cultural trends from the West. To many conservative Russians, this balance was exactly what the country needed. He once said, "If you don't respect your past, you will lose your future." That belief guided nearly everything he did. Whether building monuments or reshaping military doctrine, he always looked through the lens of history. Despite the enormous challenges, sanctions, international pressure, internal dissent, he endured. Not because he was invincible, but because he was adaptable. In the chessboard of global politics, he rarely played the same move twice. He studied his opponents, learned from past conflicts, and changed course when necessary. This flexibility kept him ahead, while others stumbled. And now, as the world looks at the twilight of his presidency, the question arises, what will he leave behind? To some, he leaves a complicated legacy, marked by both greatness and controversy. To others, he leaves a template for strong leadership in uncertain times. but what cannot be denied is the sheer scale of his journey. From the grey concrete blocks of Leningrad's working-class neighborhoods to the glittering halls of the Kremlin, from riding subways as a boy to commanding armies as a president, Putin's life has been a story of transformation, both personal and national. For the people of Russia, he is more than a historical figure. He is a symbol of their country's struggle and strength, a man who took the chaos of the past and carved out a future. His story teaches us that greatness isn't about where you begin. It's about how far you are willing to go, how fiercely you're willing to fight, and how deeply you're willing to believe in something greater than yourself. And so, as this chapter of his life comes to a close, the lessons remain. Be disciplined. Be strategic. Stand tall when the world pushes you down. Believe in your vision, and never stop moving forward. For those who do, like Putin, the pages of history will never forget your name. If you found this story inspiring, powerful, or eye-opening, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. At Mindset English, we believe that every life holds a lesson, and every journey has something to teach us. Stay with us for more incredible stories that will challenge your mind, touch your heart, and awaken your inner strength.